Good afternoon, everyone. This is a hysterical deaf woman. Today's vlog, I have to say, is about how the SSI get it wrong with deaf people. When SSI people are trying to get interviews like I am right now, trying to get together with people, they have a lot of problems understanding deafness, just like they do with blindness. There's a lot of different degrees of deafness and blindness. So when people say they're deaf, they automatically think that they are full deaf from birth. And I think people get the same idea with blindness. And there are all kinds of blindness where you can't see at night, perhaps, or maybe you see only outlines of things, or maybe you're colorblind. So the same thing with deafness. So let's go through this a little bit. And this is not a professional video, obviously. I'm just trying to be a human being talking to another human being. A fireside chat, you might say. I'm trying not to be angry. I spent most of the morning very upset and crying. My husband finally did get a hold of somebody at the Social Security Administration office. And in the middle of the discussion, after getting a hold of them, he was accused of lying. And apparently the person had said something like, well, it seems like she can hear fine when she's speaking to you. So he's basically accused of lying, which is basically, I'm being accused of lying and then that I'm not deaf. So how can I put this? Where do SSI get it wrong? First of all, not all deaf people are born deaf, full deaf. They go deaf at different times in their life. They go deaf when they're seniors. All these are different kinds of deafness, depending on what part of the ear is damaged. I'm not an expert on it because it has to do with neurobiology too, and that's the last frontier really, about how we communicate with our body to our brain. So there are actually other ways to hear even without the ears. I mean, dolphins do it, for instance, whales, a lot of sea creatures, a lot of insects, things that I can't hear now that chirp, chirp, chirp. There's vibrational hearing. So SSI people, when you are trying to interview a deaf person who comes in and say they're deaf, they might mean that they're severely hearing impaired and they don't know which world they belong in, if they belong in with the deaf or if they belong with the hearing. They're usually like me and they might not belong in either place. So that's the number one thing. There are different degrees of deafness and different parts of the ears are affected, which means you might not hear high-pitched sounds or low-pitched sounds, or you might have an audio processing disorder and really need to talk more to a neuroscientist, a neurobiologist. Neurology department won't know anything. So when you have this deaf person or hard of hearing or hearing impaired, you have to remember that some people don't go deaf into their childhood. They have genetic disorders, so they may be able to understand some speech, but not others. They have a hard time processing it quick enough to really understand what's being said in a decent amount of time. There are people that have their nerves damaged, and it's usually a genetic thing, and there are other things that go along with it. Let's say, I know there's like Marie-Tooth syndrome. I don't think it's like Guillain-Barré, but there's a lot of genetic ones that affect your bones, your digestion, your swallowing, and it's mistaken a lot for MS and cerebral palsy and stenosis. So usually if you have a genetic hearing loss with an individual that comes in, they do have other things. Fibromyalgia, for instance, which is now considered autoimmune. It's never usually just deafness. What would be the next thing that I would say? I think the assumption that all deaf people or hard of hearing people have the right equipment to communicate with you. Now, that's only true from my experience that if you're born full deaf and you go to the deaf school, you have all the equipment. You are given your text. Nobody does the oh gosh. Even if I had a sheet in front of me, I wouldn't remember it because it's so obsolete now. Nobody does it. But I have a closed caption phone, but it's not working since I've done the update. So don't assume that every deaf person or hearing impaired person has a closed caption. They're very obsolete. Everybody texts. So all the equipment is not something that's just given out freely, especially if you go deaf when you're older. I'm one of those. I went deaf at 10 or started to, and then went full more. I'm about 85, 80% deaf, different tones. So I was not, I have to buy all my equipment. Anything that I want on this Android or anything that I have now, which was for my surgery this year, it's not just given to me. So don't make that assumption that people have all the equipment that they need to do this. They need to get set up with apps. They need to have somebody that knows how to do these apps. And a lot of setting these things up requires listening to things. Almost anything you do requiring this long setup, or listening to YouTubes, and some of them don't have closed caption. So basically you have no one to help you to set it up. Even if you could, say it did work and you have it all, you have to have it all set up. You have to be able to repair it. If it breaks down, you have to understand what happens after you do the updates. When I did my CC, that stopped working. I couldn't call anybody. They offered me numbers. They're always offering me numbers. So that's the second thing. Don't make assumption that everybody has the right equipment. Let's see. What would be the third thing that I get an awful lot that I know sign language. I'm trying to keep this as real as possible. That's why I didn't write anything out. I don't want to be accused of lying. Because I can go by my own experience. Everywhere I go, to the grocery store, to government offices, to medical offices, to the hospital when I went and got the surgery, they will finally go, oh, we'll get a sign language interpreter for you, or that tele thing where someone comes on and does sign for you. I do not know sign language. When we tried to do sign language, people from distant districts, different counties have different ways of signing. If you go to Texas, you'll have somebody who signs different than someone from Washington or Oregon. So don't make the assumption that everybody does the same sign language. Britain has a little bit different. You go over to the, Europe, it'll be a little bit different. Each country will be a little bit different. So why wouldn't somebody know sign language if they're deaf? Well, I was adopted, for instance, and I didn't grow up with a family that knew anything about it. There was no sign language in my small town. There was no internet to learn it. And like I said, again, even if you do learn it on the internet, it might not be the one for your area. You might go meet up with some people like we did to do a sign language club, and everybody there had a different idea of what one word should look like. So it was very frustrating. So that is the third thing. Not everybody who is deaf or severely hearing impaired knows sign. And my husband and I made up our own sign. So it doesn't always do good to offer somebody that. You kind of have to ask them if they do sign language. So yeah, we got called. I wouldn't say names, but I mean the normal thing that you do, because I was taking counseling to be a counselor. You go through this whole thing, and it's usually you're putting up roadblocks. That's one I hear all the time when you go to the VR somewhere. or you have somebody that's trying to rehabilitate themselves from drugs and alcohol, the first thing you look for as a counselor, are they trying to put up roadblocks? What is keeping them from achieving their goal? Um, so I started crying about that time on the phone with this person when my husband was relaying what they were saying. And he had to explain to them that I was sitting right by him, reading his lips, and he was doing a little bit of sign. And at that time, I burst out in tears. I was so upset. I was so upset. And I got kind of loud. And I said that this is the type of prejudice that I get because I'm a speaking, severely hearing impaired person. I'm not a full deaf person. If you do shove some hearing aids in me or something like that, or headphones that are turned way, way up, I might be able to hear a little bit. But then everybody will say, it's a miracle. Betsy can hear. Elizabeth can hear. you know? And that's the fourth thing. Just because somebody's speaking, don't make the assumption that they're hearing. If you watch the show that was on Switched at Birth, you'll see a lot of those differences that I'm talking about. The main character, and then some of the people from the deaf school. There were a lot of real deaf actors on there. And the gal who played the lead was I guess she was kind of deaf like I. If she put hearing aids in, and those are the big giant ones, you can hear yourself speak. I have been practicing this so long, and I have vibrational hearing. I have genetic hearing loss, by the way, for those who don't know me already, anybody who might be watching this for the first time. My whole family has it. I have a sister and brother, and my dad has cochlears now. And we all have the same type of hearing loss with the same kind of like cervical spinal stenosis and arthritis, which my dad has really bad now. So on my other side of family, my mom was a latent deaf, and I have a brother that is half deaf. So I have it on both sides of the family. Very genetic. So anyway, I forgot what I was talking about. That's the thing about not having notes, and it's a real video. So please forgive me. But I mean, I think I was talking about that I was crying basically, and I got upset about all that. And I offered, well, you can meet my father, you can get on Facebook. But don't make the assumptions that even my family members and I are going to be having the exact kind of thing going on. We all lost it around 10, and we all have other conditions going on, fibromyalgia or what have you, cervical spinal stenosis. So I cried and cried and cried and said, yeah, that's just what I want to do. You have to take in consideration when you don't have the right equipment, you don't have people around, you don't have sign, you have to rely on family members if you have them, which I've never even met most of mine, or your spouse. So let me tell you, that relationship isn't going to go too grand if your husband has to interpret for you for 20-something years, which mine has. I'm not going to get on the phone and be able to understand it all, the mile and miles of dialogue that there is before you can even push 1 or 2, whatever option to whatever. It depends on how high you have your volume turned up on your end and how much I need to turn mine up. And then the person that answers the phone, I might not hear them at all because they have their volume so low. So if I can hear them at all, even if it's like a little tiny whisper, I'll say, I can't hear you. Do you have a volume you can turn up? Because I have mine all the way up on my special headphones or whatever, which usually my husband gets for me. So even if I could make the phone call myself, I have to go through, the automated AI thing that's going on. as everybody knows, and you press one, whatever options for whatever. Well, the Social Security place now has a really, really, really long one, and my husband had to sit for 10-15 minutes for that before he's even given an option. Then he was put on hold, and he timed it. It was like 9 minutes more and 10 seconds before someone even answered. So basically, I'm having my husband sit around for more than 20-25 minutes, a half an hour. And he has some things that he needs to go do. And then we couldn't get a hold of him. We had to call back. So then he had to do it a couple days in a row. I'm not saying that it's easy for Social Security people right now. I'm not trying to say that at all to you guys. I'm not, I know it's been hard with COVID, but it's really rough with deaf people right now because everyone's wearing masks and we can't read lips. And we don't even know how much we rely on reading lips until it's gone. And then it's this, oh my goodness, I had no idea I was even reading lips until the COVID thing. So you should remember, I'm having to take my spouse with me everywhere and do everything. And I really want this to be a helpful video for anybody who works for SSI, wants to work for SSI, or in community service and counseling and things like that. I think she was really trying there at the end, and then we got accused of making roadblocks, and that's what I get all the time for like the last 20 years when I've lost most of my hearing. People want me to do counseling, and they come up with all these different ideas that I can do something, and then a light bulb goes on. Sometimes for both of us that, oh yeah, well, there's no CC on the Zoom, and everybody's sitting too far away, and I can't really read lips. It's not 100%. So I had to have my husband sit with me for counseling to talk about him, although he's not supposed to be there because I actually wanted to talk about him. So it's not roadblocks, really. And that really upset me, that I was accused of lying, he was, and that we're putting up roadblocks. Believe me, when you're an in-betweener like me, where you're not really 100% deaf and you're not a hearing person, it's really, really hard. And I understand the frustration for you as well. But to accuse me of being a liar, I couldn't think of anything more painful and more prejudiced to say to a handicapped person. The VR and the Social Security, I went there seeking help. I went there seeking protection. And I got totally the opposite. I went there not even for money. I just wanted to be on the record so somebody knew I existed in case my husband died. I just wanted a record of me. I have gotten a hold of my adopted brother just recently. But other than that, I've had nobody in my life. So if my husband died, I would be fighting to get some sort of rights from the ADA, which is supposed to also protect me, because everybody ignores the ADA Act. Well, that's what it says, the Americans Disability Act. I'm being redundant. So that would be another thing. Try to follow up on the ADA. I'm so sorry. I'm trying not to cry. I'm trying not to get upset. It was a bad morning. I would recommend doing that, not knowing that there's different degrees of deafness, that not everybody has the equipment to assist them or the help to assist them. They rely on their, they rely on their spouses and things like that. And people need to know about the Americans Disability Association. I know I'm missing something else there, and I apologize. But all those things, and this is going to be a long vlog here, and I didn't want it to be that long. I could talk forever, but it takes a long time to upload these to YouTube because my other camera doesn't work, so, or not very well. See, that's the other thing. When we say something doesn't work very well, you can't automatically say, oh, you can walk, or oh, you're healed. Like people with fibromyalgia who get it all the time. because sometimes they might be able to and other days not. So just because I can hear one person when I'm standing right next to them, staring right at them because they just happen to have the right tone that I might hear a little or even be able to process, that doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to hear the woman that you bring in and she has a quiet, it's really, So when you're going out to work with people, I can't do phone work at all, no way. And this isn't even about trying to prove that. I'm just saying this for people that are counselors and SSI workers and to hard of hearing people. It's an in-between thing. It's not all one way or the other. So you can't just say, oh, you're cured, or oh, you can work this full-time job, or you can hear everybody. No, it doesn't work that way with deafness or blindness. It just doesn't. I wish it did. Believe me, it make it a lot easier for me if I could just hear, or if or if I was just completely deaf, because I would get a lot more help. I would have somebody definitely bring in equipment and do sign language. I get a cochlear, which I am looking into. So yeah, it would make it a lot easier. I'm not. Oh, that brings me back to it, That's what I was going to say. That why in the world would I have my husband go through 25, 30 minutes or anybody to fake deafness? It's a pain in the ass. And we have to do it several days in a row for $100. You have to look at my things. I'm only getting $100 a month. I'm not going to go through all this for that amount of money. I was mainly just trying to be known so people would know that I existed out in the world, because I'm really scared. So if anybody, I'm going to maybe take this to the Dow's Social Security and all the Social Security Administration, so it can be a helpful little advising. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Just in general, if you're a counselor or a social worker, please put some comments down, in the comment section below. It'd be nice to like and subscribe. Ask me anything, I'm not faking it. I speak fairly well, unless you have me do college type of words. There's a lot of words like ambulance. I have to practice because I don't know. I still had most of my hearing through grade school, and I started losing it more in high school. So most songs, the words to the songs, that's what it sounds like to me. So I don't know a lot of songs, and I don't know how to pronounce certain words, but general language like this, I do okay. This would be interesting for you to know. Please, by all means, ask me anything you want. I'll tell you as much as I can about the in-between people. If you want to know more about full deaf people, there's plenty of full deaf people that do vlogs with their parents and things like that, young people. So yeah, educate yourself, please educate yourself. So I'm going to wrap it up now because it's about 23 minutes here, so it's going to take forever to download, but I think it would be worth it if I do it. And I'd really appreciate it if you at least try to get halfway through this, or even skip ahead. I should put it in markers like Dr. Dre does, so we have a good idea of what you can skip to. But anyway, those are some of the things I wanted to say. So we'll get this call, and maybe I'll update you guys so that you know how it goes. I've just had a really bad day, and I'm sure the person I talked to, they're not having a great day. Hopefully, I give them something to think about. Fortunately, most of the time they just don't get it. So this is what this is about. And I'm going to wrap this up now and say, I love you guys. Thank you for watching. Thank you for the ones that have subscribed. Thank you for caring. Let's try to make this world a better place for people like that. The handicapped people, disabled people. Let's try to make this better for everybody. It's been tough on everybody. So thank you for listening.